Welcome back to Catasta Charisma Making a Latex Box Bag, Part 2. Let's continue where we left off and make up the box pocket. With the back pocket section face down upon the work surface, overlay with a side section. Unlike general piecing, in which the overlaying section extends beyond the underlaying section, this time it extends internally within the underlaying section. When pressing the seam to bond, press only the side, but leave the bottom corner unpressed. This was a mistake I made in my first attempt at making this pocket, making the joining of the later bottom section a bit more problematic. After joining one side, you can now repeat the process for the opposite side. Okay, the next bit of piecing, in which we join in the bottom section, is going to be quite fiddly. Essentially, we lay the bottom section's edge upon the underlaying section's bottom edge, again, so the section lays internally within the work, rather than extending beyond it. But when we get to the ends, we also need to join its side edges to those of the side sections. To do this, we have to peel back the bottom corners of the side sections so we can align them to the bottom section's corners. Hence, why we don't want to press the corners as I did. When I realised this and I had to peel back the corners, it damaged the glue surface and I had to reapply more glue. Once the corners are aligned together, we can then work up the short run of the edges to the next corners. Press the seams, but again leave the now elevated corners for when we come to join the front pocket section. All of this will be seen much more clearly within the instructions provided with the pattern. Joining the front section is again fiddly, as we are now dealing with a three-dimensional form and we can't always see what we are doing, but often having to feel our way. But it won't be as bad as one might think. Rather than trying to place the front section upon the work already done, it is easier to join the made-up sections to the front section while it lays flat on the work surface. Start at one top corner, work down to the bottom corner and align, and then continue along the bottom edge to the next corner and then back up to the top. We can now press everything firmly into place. You may not have beautiful looking corners. I didn't for my first attempt at this, but this is often okay, for these seams will all be hidden when we turn the pocket inside out. To incorporate the pocket within the bag, first take the pocket pattern template and remove its seam allowances from its sides and bottom. Use this template to mark around on your bag where you want the pocket to be located. We now need to apply a coat of glue both within the marked out area of the bag and across the back underside surface of the pocket. As the pocket will be quite floppy, it will be easier to apply glue if the pocket is internally supported, either with some stuffing or better yet with an actual harder surfaced object. Apply the coat of glue across the entire surface areas and allow all glue to dry. Again, because this is a larger area, it is easier to apply using an offcut of sponge. Okay, this is where I made the next mistake. When joining the pocket to the bag, it is much easier to place the pocket into position and obtain a more successful result if the bag is still internally supported and so the rubber more taut. Once in place, the internal support can then be carefully removed and the back of the pocket smoothed down by hand before then pressing. Clean down any residual glue and markings, and the most difficult part of this whole project has now been done. Of course, one doesn't have to incorporate this style of pocket or any pocket at all. In the instructions to the pattern, I will provide options for a pocket's exclusion, as well as a couple of more simple styles that we may wish to include. Our next task is to prep the bag for its construction. Take the bag pattern template, and where we see circles for fasteners, poke a hole through the middle of each one. Align the pattern over your bag and mark on the rubber the positions of these holes. I am first going to incorporate snap fasteners into the corners of the side flaps. I would need 4 snap fastener pins, 2 female ports and 2 male ports. The pattern will provide you with the necessary information as to where each type of port is to be positioned and upon which sides of the bag. There is no need to add any rubberized fabric stabilizers behind these snap fasteners, as their purpose is to simply hold the top of the side flaps together, and as such once they are closed they remain that way and need not be repeatedly unfastened and refastened. We could also use rivets for this purpose, but I didn't have any. But also with this style of bag, by using snap fasteners, it always gives me later options to totally dismantle the bag without having to damage the rubber, so I can include extra features or change things around. With the snap fasteners incorporated, I now turn my attention to the method by which I want to fasten close the bag flap. The pattern will give you various options, but in this case I am going to use magnetic clasps. As the clasp will be repeatedly tugged upon when opening and closing the bag, I do need to include a stabilizer to help prevent wear and tear of the rubber. To do this, I take some cotton woven tape and apply a coat of liquid latex to one side of it using an offcut of sponge. Immediately after applying the latex, I move the tape to prevent it from sticking to the paper underneath it, which is protecting my work surface. Using a hairdryer, I can speed up the process of the drying. Once dry, I apply another coat of latex, shift the location of the tape, and allow it to dry again. I repeat the process twice more for the other side of the tape. With tape rubberized, I now apply a coat of glue to both sides, and a coat of glue across a scrap of rubber. I also apply coats of glue within the areas of the bag where the clasps are to be incorporated. When the glue is dry, I cut the tape into 2 circles and the scrap of rubber into 2 larger circles. For magnetic clasps, the female port, which will be on the front of the bag, will need its stabilizing fabric placed on the inside of the bag. The prongs of the port are then positioned into place and slits cut for their incorporation. The prongs are then slid through the slits from the front, bent over themselves, and then covered over by a circle of rubber. The male port, which is incorporated on the bag flap, goes through the same process as the female one, but this time the stabilising fabric is positioned on the front of the bag. With the stabilising fabric and a rubber covering disc being visible on the front of the bag, we will need to hide this decoratively. There are countless ways we might choose to do this embellishment, by simply covering over with the same colour of latex used for the front, to contrast colours of applique, but in features or something a bit more lavish, such as with one of the flowers my friend Jeannie Lou made for me from excess latex. In the instructions I will provide various examples. Our last bit of preparation is to cut the slits along the side flaps and the bottom area of the bag, through which straps will later pass that will hold the bag together. Take the pattern template and within the elongated slots, cut slits. Place the pattern template over your bag and mark the slits upon your work. Yes, I missed out marking 2 slits. I caught these later on. As it is very difficult to cut out slots as drawn on the pattern templates, an easier alternative is buttonhole slits. To cut these, we need to punch 2 holes at either end of each marked out slit and then make a cut between the holes. Punching holes can be a painful and arduous affair, but worth doing to ensure that over time the cut for the slit doesn't spread further across the surface area of the bag. One can make the rubber less resistant to being punched by aligning the hole punch over the area where the hole is to be made, and then sliding a scrap of fabric over the rubber. I demonstrate this later when making an adjustable belt. One can use scissors when cutting these slits, and again I'll demonstrate this in a later video. But if you want to use a rotary cutter, then rather than pushing forward with the cutter, lever the handle upwards. This slowly rotates the blade over the rubber in a much more controlled way. Excuse me for now while I go and sit down and punch all these holes and make my slits, but join me next time when I'll be turning my attention to making the straps for the bag.